Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to our presentation. My name is Kelly Smith, and I'm here with my colleague Bailey Lake, and we both work at Eastern Kentucky University Libraries. So today we want to tell you a little bit about our journey and experience incorporating graduate student assistance in our publishing program. Go to the next slide. But we want to start and learn a little bit about you all. So I'm gonna cross your fingers, everybody. I'm gonna start a poll. Are you able to see it? Did it show up? No? Hold on. Relaunch poll. Continue. Okay.
There
Can
you
you see it?
go. Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So if you wouldn't mind, everybody attending, just fill this out. And this will also help us a little bit with how we frame what we talk about today. Okay. And also, I will say we would like to make this fairly conversational. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to, raise your hand and we can have people going off mute and asking questions. That's no problem, or put questions in the chat. Okay, so it looks like, trying to count in my head real quick. Just about everybody has filled this out. So I'll go ahead and end it. Are you able to see the results? No? Share results.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Can you see that? So it looks like a little bit over half have not started incorporating student employees in your program, and that's fine. And some of you have. And if you have, definitely chime in today. If you have similar or different experiences, we would like to hear about it. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so now that was quantitative. Now we're going to go to a little more qualitative feedback from y'all. We're going to do a Padlet. There's a link that I'm going to stick in the chat, or you can use the QR code. While you all are filling that out, I'm going to get logged in. Yeah, okay. So enrich, and feel free also in the Padlet, if you like somebody else's response, want to echo that, go ahead and hit the little heart. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Sometimes frustrating, a lot of work, helpful, more work than you would expect, enriching, enlightening. I'll admit that I'm the one that put the people jumping up and down because Bailey and I were very excited when we were able to get another pair of hands to help us with some of this work. Cost effective, but challenging in terms of training. Yes. All right. We could really use student help with proofreading, citations, accessibility, playing editors / authors in training. I'd like to hear more about that. If someone, if anybody who put that wants to say more, I'd love to hear about that. Cataloging, the publishing review processes, and layout. Yeah, all those things. Anything else coming to folks' minds as you're looking at other people's responses? Peer review for undergraduate student journal. Yeah. Yes. Importing and formatting press books. Yes. Nice. Yes. It depends on the skills and experience they bring. Yes. Yes. Yeah, this is great. Okay. So, a lot of, yes, agree with a lot of this stuff. All of these echo the experiences that we've had. I'd like to give you just a little bit of a context. I don't want to dwell too long on this, but just to give you some idea of why we needed to employ students and what that looked like before we had students. So I've put a little bit of a timeline here. We published our first OER in late 2019. We had the launch in February of 2020, right before the pandemic. So that was interesting timing. In that early stages, 26 through like 22, we were really just getting started. Bailey wasn't with us yet. Our staffing was basically myself. I'm the director of collections and discovery, so I have a lot of oversight over a lot of different things. And this was just one piece of what I was doing. And that was the same for the other staff who worked. So for example, we had our metadata librarian who handled the metadata data portions of this. We had a copyright librarian who did a lot of the outreach for faculty. And it was really the three of us that were doing most of the work. We also had a collection development librarian who was the liaison to the African and African American Studies program. And so she was the person that did the original sort of like talking with the program about what they needed and like letting them know how we could help. After Slavery to Liberation was published, we had an example to show other faculty about what OER could look like. And so we also had created a subcommittee out of Faculty Senate to look at affordable book options for students. So that committee wrote a grant to our Board of Regents, and we were able to get $75,000 from the Board of Regents to create learning communities and incentive grants for faculty to either adopt or author OER. So during that time period, from 20 to 22, we published one original book, the OER, and then a collection of ancillaries that was based on an already published book. Then in fall of 2021, our university started a equitable access program with Barnes & Noble. At our institution, the university pays for all of the textbooks out of its operating budget. So this was a little bit of a setback because it's a little bit harder to market using OER in this context, but we still had a lot of faculty really interested in this from a pedagogical perspective, from a advocacy and a perspective where they had the power to create what they wanted to create for their classes. So we continued to grow the program. We had the English department wanted to create an OER for the entire first year program of like introductory English. That's a huge impact right there. So we were able to publish that year. And then we were really feeling the pain because we were getting more interest, and it was really hard to get all the work done and really stay on top of the authors in terms of the publishing cycle. And we were also sort of learning to fly the plane as we flew it, so to speak. So we were developing the processes, figuring out how to deal with accessibility, all that stuff. So when we had an opening come up, one of our librarians retired, we made that position an OER librarian, which was like the best thing that's ever happened to me in my professional life, because Bailey joining us and being able to focus exclusively on all this stuff was just, it really jump-started the speed with which we could do this program. So as you can see, we started publishing a lot more books. And I mean, in 24, it was like 4 of them. We also got another grant to work with the first year studies. The first year studies program to create a book for them. They are almost finished with that now. And at that point, like right before that started, right before we started that grant, I was having sort of an off the cuff conversation with my dean about, how we were going to manage the capacity of all this. And I was like, well, I really just wish we had a graduate assistant. I think that would really help. And she's like, well, why don't we ask? So she did. So she put a bug in the ear of the person on our campus who manages that. And he said, well, we're getting ready to do the allocations for that. So you can just submit what you need and we'll see if you get accepted. So that I'm going to talk about more in a minute on the next slide. But first, I want to just point out that we are now in the spring of 2025. We've had 2 springs of graduate assistants. And you can see how the increase of our output has happened. Additionally, in the very beginning, we were only using bpress and publishing static PDFs. And then as we got access to more platforms, that has also expanded. So that's like, it's good because it gives different options for different types of OER, but it's also a little bit harder to keep up with in terms of training. Okay, Bailey, next slide. Okay, so we worked on this GA request. And as we were doing it, the request itself asked us to think about how this fit institutional needs, why is it best for the library to have a GA slot instead of another department? So we looked through strategic planning documents and statewide council on post-secondary education priorities, and we kind of framed our request around that. And so we felt that a GA working on OER really aligns student employee experiences with our goal to provide transformative and accessible learning environments. That is a stated goal of EKU. We knew we had faculty interested in publishing these things, and so we need support for that. At the time, advancing equity and inclusion through accessible, adaptable course content was a point that we needed to include. Because of the things that are going on statewide at this point, that is something that we won't be able to include anymore. But it is still something that it does. We also have, so when we originally applied for this position, we have another set of needs in the library around creating digital learning objects that we thought might align with this position. We weren't sure at the beginning if we would have enough work just with OER for a student working 20 hours a week. So we kind of built in other options for the student to be able to work with the library. So those last 2 points relate to that. Okay. So that's institutional needs. And then in terms of like our needs in the library of how we need support, capacity to support and maintain faculty authored OER and ensure accessibility compliance. I want to talk, so I'm going to have Bailey interrupt me here for a minute and talk about, I gave a couple of different examples of that year that you started before we had a student employee and we were working on Accessible Appalachia and all the things we had to do to get all that done and what the author was asking for us from help. So could you talk a little bit about that capacity that we didn't quite have? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So my first project as OER librarian was an OER called Accessible Appalachia. And it was a collection of chapters written by authors from all across Appalachia. And the author was EKU based, but we had received submissions from all over. And as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, when you call for chapters, you get sort of everything under the sun. So even though we had specified that the author wanted Chicago style formatting, she wanted the headings to be done, we asked for all these things, but we did not get it. We got some APA, we got some just, people making up their own citation styles, and they were just a mess formatting wise, to be frank. So we had to use our time and our library resources luckily we had a Chicago style expert who works in the dean's office, and she was able to lend some of her expertise. But the time that it took to check every single citation in this 21 chapter OER was just, it was a full-time job in and of itself. And luckily we were able to get some undergraduate student help at that point, and that made a huge difference in the timeline for publishing that OER. And that OER had been delayed by COVID and by just a variety of other factors. So we were eager to go ahead and finish that project. And our student worker, and if we had had a graduate student at that time, it would have made a huge amount of difference, because as you know, accessibility checking is extremely time consuming. And then when you add that to the formatting issues and the citation checking that we had to do, it was quite a project.
Yeah, and the other thing I will say is we don't do that for every OER that that we work on with faculty, but in this particular case, the editor had some life challenges in terms of like health issues in her family that she had to deal with, and she is an editor, that's what she does, and she was going to edit it all, but she just did not have time, and we needed to get it out in time for the semester to start. So anyway, that's why we jumped in and helped. But if we had a student, we could have helped a lot sooner. So just like a little insight into the struggles that we were having at that time to kind of fit that work in. Okay, you go to the next slide. So I just included this because I love our vice provost, or no, that's not his title. What is his title? I can't remember. But Ryan Baggett is an awesome administrator at our university, and he was like, "Yay, you're the only new university GA line that was awarded." So we were excited about that. So yeah, we got the position. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And I wanted to include, for people who are thinking about doing this and you want a little template, like I've included the link to the draft that we had for the job ad that we did. And that's right there. So basically, what we were looking for, somebody who would help us create and manage EKU faculty authored open OER, assisting with publishing tasks and researching OER best practices. So we haven't just given the person a list of things to do. Like, it's a little bit more higher order thinking. Yeah, I'll put that in there in just a second, Kestrel. And then identifying gaps and collaborating and communicating with stakeholders. So originally our idea was we want somebody that has experience in writing or perhaps education, but definitely needs to be detail oriented because they need to be able to do the technical work as well. And I'll put that link in the chat here in just a second. Okay, next slide.
Okay.
All right, and this is Bailey, so I'll shut up.
So when we heard we were able to hire a GA, we were super excited. We hired a GA, and I was like, oh no, I have to train this person. That was my first thought. So as a relatively new OER librarian myself, I put together several links that I had used to orient myself to the world of OER. So the Open Education Network's Canvas course for onboarding and also developing the open and open content are both extremely useful. Academic Journals Doing Crime is meant to be sort of a break after so much reading for the GAs, but it is a very funny YouTube video that talks about some of the issues with traditional publishing industry in a way that's really humorous and easy to understand. And then a lot of the work that I planned for the GAs to do was strongly tied to accessibility. So I definitely wanted them to learn how to correctly write and edit alternative text, which, as many as you will know, it's actually a lot harder than it sounds. It's an art form for sure. And then for some unholy reason, all of our OER authors are still insisting on using Chicago style citations. So it's really important to have the students have at least a basic understanding of that citation style so they can recognize when things are really wrong, even if we're not doing the full citation checking that we did for Accessible Appalachia. And then lastly, both GA students that have worked with me we've just happened to be doing a ton of work in Manifold. So the last two links are to the Manifold GitHub servers, and they are both an orientation to Manifold as a platform and a resource for the students if they need help later in the semester. I also want to shout out the Open Education Network, which does great work in OER and as actually the reason that we have we use their Manifold instance, and it saves us a ton of money because EKU is a member of the Open Education Network. So I'm going to go over the work of 2 graduate students that we worked with in the fall and spring. So the first GA that we hired was in fall 2024. He was a computer science major. It was his last semester as a graduate student. So we were willing to look outside of majors like English. We wanted to try someone with different skills, the more technical side of OER. He had previous experience in the math tutoring center on campus. So he was definitely used to working with other people. He had great tech skills, great communication skills. His strengths were coding, data formatting, editing for appearance. He was great at formatting charts, graphs. He was very good at alt text. He was great at finding images with open licenses, and he understood intimately file naming conventions, all of which was very helpful. He did, as all students will, had some areas for growth, and these were citation editing, content editing, and grammar editing. He was just not as comfortable with those skills as others, which was a challenge for both me and him, and that was okay. However, these are the projects that I had him work on. So the first, security analysis and critical belief analysis, are 2 Homeland Security OERs. And we published security analysis on bpress, which is the PDF-based publication. And we wanted to move that to Manifold to increase the accessibility of that text. And so critical belief analysis is the companion text to this PDF-based text. So we wanted to do those together so that students could use them together, both on Manifold when they needed to. So there were a ton of tables in security analysis. And because it had previously been published, we didn't want to ask the authors to totally rewrite their textbook. We wanted to make the tables accessible within the new platform. And this was definitely a challenge. I will show you what GA1 was able to do. So this is how one of the tables uploaded into Manifold. You can see it just cuts off step 3 at ASPE, and the formatting is quite wonky. And so he was able to format a code style to make this look a lot better. And I was very appreciative that he was able to figure that out because it meant I did not have to. Okay, also, I meant to do that. Let me go back, sorry. He also did a lot of work for alt text editing for critical belief analysis, checking all of the images, creating that alt text. And then we also aim to provide different file formats for all of our OER that we publish, which includes an accessible PDF version for every OER. And so he was a whiz at PDF accessibility checking, which is absolutely no joke. It's hard work. Also, we had an open pedagogy project from an English 830 class. It's called Life from Within. And they were bound and determined to do it in Google Sites. And it is a beautiful product. I'm very proud of it. But Google Sites in general is not the best for accessibility. And so because accessibility is such a value of ours, we had him help with creating an accessible version in Manifold of the same product. And so we're able to point to an accessible version from the Google site original. And then I did have him begin citation checking for Ancient and Modern, which is the sequel to Slavery to Liberation. And it is all about, it's an African studies OER. It's fantastic. It was just recently published, but he did start that against his will. I will say that. All right, GA2 was an English major. It is her 2nd semester as a graduate student. She is still with me. Her previous experience has been as a studio consultant, which our studio is our writing lab, which allows students to come in for editing help, for help with their presentations. They can make appointments and get writing help. So she lives and breathes, editing, English, all the things. Her strengths are the exact opposite of GA1's, right? Content editing, citation mining, she's excellent. Graphic design, more creative pursuits, selecting readings for English, presentation, marketing skills. And she also served on an OER student panel and was excellent at that. But of course, she has areas for growth as well. So her areas for growth are the opposite. She struggles with the coding and the backend formatting and the more technical aspects of OER. So the projects we had her focus on were she did for the vast majority of the citation editing for Ancient and Modern, partly due to timing and partly due to student preference. She also is good at alt text. She did the alt text for Ancient and Modern. We are working on a stretch project for her, which is the more technical side of moving Slavery to Liberation, which is in BPress, the PDF format, to Manifold to create a more accessible version. We are anticipating that to be done by this spring. And she also has done a ton of alt text and licensing work for images and videos that is in an OER that we're also working on. So a lot of checking, understanding Creative Commons license, working with authors to see what images they can and can't use. And then her greatest success, I think, has been cultivating resources for the Commons, the second edition. So the book that Kelly mentioned for English 102, I believe, that was published in 2019 or 2020, one of the early ones. They're creating an updated version of that text, and they need, so it is, the basic format of this OER is a lot of sort of critical reading and then assignments that go along with open articles. So we needed more articles with a Creative Commons license that we could add to the text. And so she actually used this book as an undergraduate student and has an intimate understanding of what is required for these articles and did a great job of finding openly licensed things that are useful. Okay, so I want to do a quick comparison here, and I love working with students. I do not want to be unkind to them in any way, but I just thought this was funny. Okay, so GA1 found and submitted 57 articles to the English professors that are writing the second edition, right? We are going to be able to use one of them. GA2 found and submitted 6 works, and we are able to use 5 of them. So very exciting, good comparison. On the other hand, GA1 formatted 12 chapters worth of tables and charts for accessibility, and GA2 did format 1 chart correctly with my support, but then she did later accidentally delete it. And it just sounds like something I would do. So we got to allow the students to have their own strengths, and it's a-okay. Right. Here are some also examples of messages I receive as a GA supervisor. Do you want to say something, Kelly?
No, I was just gonna say quickly. Yeah, Nancy said in the chat, it sounds like 2 different jobs. And I think that points to the flexibility that you need, because when we hired the first GA, we were like, we knew that his strength would not be the writing part of things. So we're like, okay, we need to find the projects that really need all that technical work. And then when he graduated and the best candidate that we had was more English focused, we're like, okay, Bailey had to retool and be like, okay, what am I going to give this person? So it really, yeah, you really want to play to their strengths, I think, to get the most out of it. And Bailey's done a fantastic job of that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do love working with students. They bring so much life, so much enjoyment to the projects that, you know, we may be exhausted by, and they can really breathe a breath of fresh air into there. And I also want to say it's important to build strong relationships with your students so that they feel comfortable telling you when they don't understand or when they need to start a new project. So as you can see, especially in this middle quote, GA1 had no qualms about telling me, I tried with the citations, but I couldn't do it. And quickly bounces back to, I think I'll start something else. And yeah, and the last comment is my favorite email subject that I've ever received. After GA1 graduated and entered the world of work, he was handling it about as well as could be expected. So that made me laugh. Okay. These messages are from GA2. You can just tell at a glance that GA2 is an English major, right? But again, I'm really proud that she had no qualms about asking for help and also telling me she's confused or that she's a little hesitant to delete some originals of OER files until someone has confirmed that she made the right changes, which is probably a good practice anyway. So, yes. Okay. And also, I feel strongly that this position has benefited our student workers in many different ways. It definitely helps them develop employability skills, helps them build their portfolios, gain real world experience, support equitable access to knowledge, and then we also want to stretch their skills with different projects. So it is definitely valuable to leverage the different strengths and preferences and allow students choice in the work that they do. My two students had very different backgrounds, very different interests, and their perspectives made our publications better. They asked different questions, they raised different issues. It was great. And this also increases student support for OER initiatives by just raising awareness, having student workers. For the university, it definitely increased our publishing productivity. It allowed us to leverage student relationships with faculty. So because GA2 had experience actually using the Commons first edition, she was able to communicate directly with the faculty, and I wasn't even necessary for her to discuss with them what open content they needed and to go ahead and check with them. Yeah, again, different perspectives, editing, making OER accessible, and increased student support. Okay. All right, so here's what we learned. It is really important to teach students that this is a real job, not a volunteer position. So as students are coming directly out of undergrad, both of mine did, sometimes they are still a little bit too much in that college mindset and they want to come in a few minutes late or not treat it as much like a real job as they should. And I'm sure other people have experienced that as well. Communication is a skill that must be practiced. So finding that balance of communicating enough to keep me in the loop, but not so much that you tell me every little thing you have to do is definitely a balance you have to find. I always encourage them to ask any questions when they're confused. And also I want to encourage everyone not to assume knowledge, especially in OER. We have a very complicated field. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that I don't know, that faculty don't know that have worked in OER before. We allow the students to have their own strengths, and also it's important to assess what your program needs. So what projects you have coming up, what skills might benefit the OER that you're planning on publishing. So maybe if you're going to be publishing a math OER, you could hire a math graduate student. And in this way, you can make your OER program more than the sum of its parts. Okay, and then I asked my current GA for a quote. I won't read the whole thing to you, but she has been surprised in how much she has learned with OER. And then also there are so many people who don't know about OER and how wonderful it is. She really cares about the accessibility of all open access materials. And through this job, she feels better knowing that she's helping to contribute to something that's going to help her peers. And I think that is just the reason that we do it, right? Made me feel good. Okay. All right. Should I stop sharing?
Well, actually, can you real quick, what's the next slide? Is it the references? Yeah. So I shared the slide deck in the thing, and so all the things that we talked about are in here. So we have a lot of time for discussion. So I'm going to be honest, I thought we had 45 minutes, so that's how I kind of plan the content. So maybe we can have a robust discussion now because we still have quite a lot of time.